Hello and welcome to Teaching Liberty. We're doing it live tonight, or maybe you're catching the replay, but we are talking about the liberty movement and how it's basically been shattered, right? All these people who oh, damn. Of course, I'm playing one of these things in the background. My bad. Had the echo real
Mhm.
quick. It's been a minute since we did the live thing. Sorry, people. Work with me. But like I said, tonight we're going to be talking about the liberty movement, the freedom movement, and how it's been shattered by the recent current events, right? So, all these people who we stood up to lockdowns, all these people who stood up to the mandates. And we seemed also very united in other issues that were coming surrounding a lot of like this woke stuff, right? The DEI complex
Mhm.
that was taking over K to 12 schools and colleges and the workplace. And so I was like, oh, like, okay, this is going to be like the new coalition, right? This is the
Mhm.
new, whether it's the right or the left or whatever, the new third party. And then boom, October 7th happened.
Yeah.
And Hamas attacks Israel, and it feels like this whole coalition just shattered and had a realignment. And really, actually, it started with the Ukraine war. If you remember, there was like Konstantin Kisin, a lot of these like America First Republicans were like, oh yeah, we need to fund Ukraine. But most of the, I would say, like liberty people, the freedom movement, got it. But Israel
Yeah.
changed everything. And it's like these people who we were standing next to calling out the abuse of power of our government are now standing with the government, cheering on the abuses of their power and
Well,
funding.
not this time, it's not abuse, it's different.
Oh, yes, I forgot. It's different
This
this
time is
time.
different.
So we're going to talk about that. And of course, I think also there's a lot of tensions from the 2024 elections, right? We have RFK, who's been like the medical freedom hero. And then you have Ron DeSantis, who like really stood up to the woke stuff and to the COVID regime. And then of course you have, your MAGA forever Trumpers. And then who knows what's going on the Democrat side. But there's definitely lots of tensions internationally and domestically. So we're going to be talking about those tonight. And I've got here with me, as you can see, the beautiful Layla Grey, also known as Propaganda Fluent. So what's going on?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting for sure. I have been taking a second from this latest psyop because it's just like so over the top. And it's interesting because I saw the currents of the woke right, as I call it, like heating up.
Mm.
They were the pot was boiling for them because it's so easy to say, "Oh, how could people fall for propaganda? How could they fall for this? How could they fall?" Well, when it's coded for you and it just hits you all in all the right spots, guess what? It's pretty easy to fall. So,
It is
we saw
hitting all those right spots right now
all the right
for
spots.
the for
So
that
we
those jokes
saw
on right.
I know, we saw suddenly people who are like pro-life conservatives who just care about the children and want to make sure anybody who has sex will have kids no matter what, even if it's 2 seconds after they copulate. Um, Suddenly they're calling to like carpet bomb kids in a place that's like
No, that's
hermetically
Hamas's fault.
sealed.
That's Hamas's fault. Every single death
Oh
is
yeah.
Hamas's fault.
I
Um,
know everything is Hamas's fault. Hamas is the kids. And it's funny because when you watch the shows in the like actual like Hebrew, like the ones that
mhm.
are from Israel, they're just like so over the top in the fact that they're like, no, we need to remove these animals from the planet. It's like,
And
Jesus,
it leaks over for sure into the
yeah,
English press.
a
You
little
will
bit,
will
but
get little
they
snippets of
cover.
it, but I highly encourage people to, if they can, to check things out in Hebrew. If you can find good translations, I know sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, can I trust this translation? But you can go to like Haaretz, Times of Israel. Those are
Yeah.
like the two biggest newspapers. Hit translate over into English and get a taste of it yourself.
Yeah.
But
You've got a
I've
lot
been
of
watching a lot of Breaking Points, System Update with Glenn Greenwald's been good. The Hill has also been pretty good with their Rising show. in terms of Western. But yeah, so that's sort of like the state of things that's going on
Well,
here.
beyond that, though, I have to say, beyond that, the most disappointing thing is how quickly people forget everything.
Mm.
We're just back to ground zero. The government is always right. It's
Right.
just
Well, it's interesting because they will hedge and they'll be like, "Well, I'm not saying that I believe everything the government says is right. It's just like on these particular points, I think that we need to do this, and there's the greater evil, communism, and So eh, I think that smart people are going to use interesting arguments or things that sound like they have some good meaning behind them.
Mhm.
um but yeah, just like you said, when it sort of hits you in your bias, it's really hard to see.
Yeah.
And it's for sure doing that right now. I mean, we've Israel has been a very long term build up. I mean, you can go back and watch videos from the 80s uh, and see they were making the same exact arguments and having very similar conversations. So it's been in the psyche, it's been in the cultural milieu for
Mhm.
decades now. And we got a little taste of it. If you remember a year ago, there was like that Kanye. Remember Kanye went crazy and started
Yeah,
saying all
Kanye.
that stuff. And I remember getting a little taste of it then, being like, you know, how certain people triggered the everything's anti-Semitism if there's any criticism, and given Kanye didn't do a good job of separating the two out. um
Well, now
but
now it's Jesus Christ, Hitler, yay. So,
oh yeah, I haven't
and
seen
like,
what's up with him lately. We'll have to do a yay
oh
check in
yeah, he did.
another episode. But there
Yeah,
are a
he
couple people
did.
checking in
Yeah.
here live, so make sure you hit that like button. Send that stream out to your friends, or if you're watching it on the replay, you can still do the same thing and leave us a comment down below. Let us know what you think about the future of the liberty movement, of this coalition that formed against the mandates and against lockdowns and against the proliferation of wokeness everywhere. What is the future of that now that we're seeing the cracks coming with the Israel-Palestine, with the 2024 elections, and just whatever they're going to throw at us next? And yeah, let us know also just like what you're thinking about this particular issue in general. Like, where do you stand on Israel Palestine? And we're also going to be getting, like I said, into Trump or into the election 2024. So let us know, what presidential candidate are you thinking about? Are you undecided? Are you over it all? Just let us know your thoughts in those comments down below. And I wanted to get us started with a video that it's actually over a month old at this point, and I've been wanting to do something on it, but it goes perfectly with our topic tonight about the realignment of this liberty freedom coalition that had developed. We're all familiar, I would hope, and if you're not, I do encourage you to become familiar with him, is Billboard Chris. And so I have this video. It's not actually on his page. It was reposted by Andy No, but right here in the very corner of the screen, you're going to be able to see in a second, is Billboard Chris. And this was November 5th, right? So a little over a month ago. And if you remember, there was massive pro-Palestinian, or, for some people, they call them pro-Hamas protests. And there was also the ARC conference. And so there was a lot of like these anti-woke Westerners in London for the ARC conference, including Billboard Chris. And they went out to the protests, and he was sort of doing his thing. And he encounters Antifa. And then is going to walk up is a group of Muslims. And there's just interesting dynamics at play here. And then we can talk about it after. So the clip's a minute long. I'll let it play out.
Prove any of your points because you actually have no evidence. Free Palestine! Do you know about half of these kids? Trying to propagate anti-LGBTQ propaganda. He's trying
to tell children that they're not allowed to be trans.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, they're not. They're not.
You're wrong.
Listen. In some religions, you can't do that. Yeah, you have to.
Right. So this is an Antifa guy, and these are Muslim protesters, and they're both pro-Palestine, right? So they're technically both on the same side. And Billboard Chris is on like the pro-Israel side, I would say, or like,
Yeah, he definitely is the pro-Israel
right.
side.
Or at least he's against like what these protests are.
No,
And
he's
yet-
come out very pro-Israel. He's very.
But that's what I'm saying. He's against these like pro-Palestinian protests here, right?
No, he
and yet-
said things about like on his ex about he doesn't like.
No, that's what
Hamas
I'm
and-
saying. Right. But what's interesting is now these pro-Palestinian people disagree about the trans issue, right? So,
Yeah.
and if you recall, there was places like in California and I believe in like Michigan or somewhere in the Midwest where it was like these groups of Middle Easterners had risen up against the woke madness in their schools. And so there was like a coalition developing there that this Israel-Palestine thing again pulled apart. And I don't know, I find this interaction so fascinating. Yeah, I'm gonna let it finish playing out, see if there's anything
Yeah.
else.
3 Abrahamic religions, yeah. LGBTQ. But in some religions they accept that, but in our religion you can't do that. What religion are you? What religion are you? Catholic. Why are you then?
He doesn't have a religion. He's Antifa.
What's your identity?
Look at this little coward
What's
wearing
your
his mask. He
identifier?
doesn't have a religion.
See, and you can hear Chris in the background being like, he doesn't have a religion. He doesn't have a religion, right? And so it's so interesting because he's supposed to be against these people, but like on this issue, he's on their side. Oh man.
Okay. Boss, wait. Stop up. No. Wait, where you from? Where you from? Where you from?
That's right. Run away.
And then they just sort of like go away. And it's
That is a great clip. That's a great clip. Well, the thing that's happening is for the communists, the issue is not the issue. The thing is they're just trying to insert themselves into strife and co-op, just like how, the Black Panther Party socialist organizations, just all of them. They co-op actual problems that people actually have and then use it to gain power. And it's funny, I've been watching a lot of these people like Billboard Chris and everything and seeing how they move. And it's really interesting because I have this grand theory. There's just a theory, but it seems like a lot of them are very much into the whole genderqueer trans thing, like just a whole myriad of influencers who are getting a lot of attention, a lot of popularity from it, even like Alex Stein, for example. And they do that because they know the conservatives are obsessed, almost to a point of like a fetish with dealing with the queer stuff. Like even on X, they were sharing, I know we're not going to talk about the story, but the whole sexual filming in the set that happened.
right.
It's like this.
It's like Democrats do it, and like Republicans share it, right?
Exactly, and obsess over it and talk about it and amplify it and just like make it be like the biggest thing in the world. So it's just interesting to see how they do that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. There's like a mutually beneficial relationship here, like some symbiotic thing, and it's like divide and conquer. And I can't help but to look at the people that were in that circle, right? The Antifa kid and Billboard Chris, and then those Muslim girls, and I can't help but to think that I have much more in common with all of those people than I do with any of the elected officials in the White House or the bureaucrats or their friends in the private industry that they have these public-private cushy relationships with, right? Like despite the fact, even as far as apart as we might seem on the trans issue, the LGBTQ stuff with the Antifa kids, and even as angry as we might be with like the fact that, like, oh, the issue is never the issue, it's about revolution. But I mean, those kids have been lied to about what capitalism is, right? Those kids have been lied to about what democracy is. Our leaders claim to be democratic. They claim that we have a capitalist economy, and yet they act like tyrants. And so when I see these kids running around in mass and saying, down with capitalism and the
Yeah.
patriarchy, I'm like, well, they're confusing their term and their definitions. They say capitalism and patriarchy, but they actually mean down with the fascistic tyrants, right? They mean down with these dictators who I also want to be down, like want to take down. And I just like I just wish that there was some way for us to reach across that, you know, little love triangle
I know,
there.
because nobody, especially the influencers, nobody actually wants to address things. Not yourself, obviously, because you do address things and you do educate. I'm talking about the influencers, the big, massive ones. It's
Oh yeah,
always
the ones that
talking
are
down.
way
It's always
we
talking down to
working, we
them.
working.
It's always pointing out the fact that they're degenerate, they're lazy, they're immoral. Look how crazy they are. We know why they're crazy. They're being poisoned. We know why, because they're being poorly, they're not educated. They don't have an understanding. They see that there is no outlet. Like, what are you going to do? Look at the economy right now. And you're telling me you're going to argue for, capitalism works? And then if you look at what's happening, especially right now with the Palestine-Israel thing, what in the hell would make any of these commie kids want to believe in American principles when they can see with their own eyes what America stands for?
Right,
Because
right.
this is what they're standing for.
Exactly. And so that's why I just find it really hard as much as I mean, I'm sitting here with my American flag glasses. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not like, yay, burn American flags. I'm not like, yay, tear down American flags and replace them with the
That's not the
Palestinian
answer
flag,
either.
right? But
Mhm.
I'm also I have a really hard time being more angry about that and focusing on that than I do about the people who are literally throwing tens of millions and billions of dollars into bombing people, into like whatever schemes they're running overseas. And I really I want to really figure out how, and this actually goes back to something that you had said about the Black Power movement. And if you remember, in was it Chicago, there was like the Rainbow Revolution, and it was what they did the Hollywood movie on him, the Black Messiah. Um oh, how am I forgetting his name right now? He was the big Black Panther. He has the movie on him. It's gonna come up.
There's like
I'm
a
gonna
lot.
Google it right now. It is, Fred Hampton, okay?
Yeah, Fred Hampton. Oh my God.
Yes. And
Talk
so
about a degenerate.
right, but that's what I'm saying. So I actually, when I read that history, right, because I think he's been mischaracterized in history in this exact same manner. Because the thing that Fred Hampton did was he united all of the different like gangs, sort of. He did like the black gang and the Puerto Rican gang and I think there
Mhm.
was like a couple different black ones, and then even I think like the poor white one. And when I see them glom onto the socialist language of like the revolutionary communists, I actually see them doing it in opposition to the abuse of our democratic system, right? To like using the cover of democracy and our government
Mhm.
to actually discriminate. And so, and when you see what they actually want is representation. What they actually want is to have that dream that is professed in our declaration, that every man is created equal and owns his own property and is able to, participate in the economy. And so I I really hesitate to paint. Yeah, even like I think that's the same thing that's going on there. Is that what's going on now? Is we've been told that these people are degenerates, right? That they hate America because they're using these language. But actually, the people who hate America are the ones who are weaponizing our value system
I think they both have their
and
own
inverting it.
flaws. Yeah, I think they both have their own flaws. And the thing that I've learned through this, seeing the woke right and the woke left, is that you can get to the exact same horrible position by taking two different paths.
Oh,
So you
yeah.
can take, one path, you're going to be a socialist, one path, you're going to be a war hawk. And look, you're still in a completely terrible state with society, being just completely corrupted and immoral. Whereas what we need to do, which I think you champion for, and so many of the people who really want freedom and liberty and truth, is there's a third option. You don't have to choose Marxism, and you don't have to choose this fascist bureaucracy that's completely owned up and down. You can choose a third option, and we never think about the third option. We only take what we're
Right.
given.
I know. It's certainly the harder option, right?
It is.
Because there's definitely a lot of evolutionary psychology that goes into us versus them, and just our
Mm-hmm.
ability to process so much information that's coming into you, the ability to contrast two ideas very clearly and simply is sort of a natural way that we're able to process things and plan and see into the future. So it's not easy, and I
No.
also don't want to sit here and pretend like I'm some like higher enlightened being that is like so much better than these people who are just like suffering to their animalistic tendencies
Mm-mm.
either.
It's
But
not.
I
It's
do think that we are doing the third option.
Mhm.
And I don't know why. I would love to understand better, like, why we're able to see that option and to try to champion that option, when it would be so much easier just to be like MAGA or like
Oh,
blue no
yeah.
matter who, you know?
Yeah, because that's the mentality of the average person, and this is the thing that we're trying to fight against so much, and people get so upset when you, like, try to acknowledge it. Like, most people, um, want to be told what to do. They want structure, they want control. They don't want to have the, spontaneity and unpredictability of being an individual, having your own individual ideas. And also, when you look at things like there's books like Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. They understand how to put things in our path that are not issues, which I think the genderqueer issue is really that. They're not really issues, they're just
Mm.
meant to be issues that we fight amongst ourselves over. Well, they're the bigger problems, like let's address the FDA and what the hell they're putting in our foods that are maybe causing these issues. um, what's in these vaccines, like so on and so forth. So these are the multiple layers that we're under attack. And because human beings, the average person, thinks at a very, we're given a way to think and view things. And we're not, again, looking at that third option, looking outside the box, looking outside of this or that binary, and taking that on. That means, oh, I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to face criticism, I'm going to be questions, I'm going to have to stand alone potentially. And that's just not something that humans are biologically designed to do, and our society is not fit in the terms that it educates us on how to actually do it.
Yeah, I do think that like all these technologies, they're a double-edged sword, right? Because in the one sense, you can get
Yeah.
sucked into a silo, and
Yes.
the platforms have there's control from the top down, of course, but then
The
also
algorithm.
the platforms just have an incentive to show you content that keeps you on the platform, right? So they have an incentive to show you content that you've shown the most tendency to like in the past, and therefore it can be a self-reinforcing cycle. So one thing that I try to do to break that cycle is, like, I'll set notifications for accounts that vary from across the spectrum. And so, like, I'll choose accounts that are representative of the different points. And then I'll try to rotate them or as I become familiar with new people. And I find that really helps me see patterns or just also people like, I mean, Elon Musk, like I have notifications for him because I think that he has his hands in a lot of interesting places. And, if he's looking at things, it's just interesting. It can be a distraction too. Again, it's a double-edged sword. But another one of those patterns I wanted to share was kind of actually relating back also to the Israel-Palestine thing right around the same time as this last tweet. And then it connects to the more recent iteration, I would say, of the propaganda campaign on Israel-Palestine. So, am I doing this correctly? I believe so. All right. So, there's this. So, Bill Ackman, I had heard his name before, but I've become really familiar with him in the coming weeks. So he quote tweets this Elon Musk comment, which is a comment on this video or this tweet, which is a quote tweet of this video here, which you can see he's up there and he's pulling down the American flags and replacing them with the Palestinian flag. So this was one of those incidents that I was sort of referring to previously. And so Elon Musk says, did they just tear down the American flag? And this is on Veterans Day, mind you. Am I understanding that correctly? Right. And then, here's some of our other big influencers, Alex, this person, LAX. And then so Bill Ackman is like, they're not just anti-Israel, they're anti-American. Right. So that's another thing that's going on here is they're trying to pose this as the West versus the East, right? The
Yeah,
West versus these barbarians, the
yeah.
West versus these anti-liberal, anti-democratic, Oriental people
Oh,
out
and
in
they're
the
just
East.
barbaric and they hate women. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
But again, it's so interesting because if you go back to that clash with between Billboard Chris and the Antifa and the Muslim girls, he's like, oh no, they don't have a religion. Like woke is their religion, right? So versus the Muslims, they have those traditions, right? They're more connected with that traditional culture, their family. And I feel like that's something that we're missing, right? Like we're missing that. It's like, there could be a positive symbiotic relationship here instead of a divide and conquer one, I think, if we kind of flip it around a little bit.
There could
Um,
be.
but I wanna show this other thing about Bill Ackman, right? Because who is Bill Ackman? I don't know if you're familiar with him at all, about who he is or why he has any notoriety that Elon Musk would comment on him or anybody would care what he has to say at this time. So he is obviously he's Jewish, but he's also a billionaire, I believe. If not a billionaire, he's like 100 millionaire, right? And he runs one of these hedge funds. So
Oh
these big
yeah,
hedge.
he's the one who's heading the school defunding Harvard and the Ivy Leagues.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
so he's going hard at Harvard. And like the thing is, again, a lot of the criticism I'm seeing here against DEI, right? So like DEI is being used to leverage like a pro-Israel voice now, right? Because they're being like, oh, look, DEI causes anti-Semitism. And so we need to get rid of DEI. This is another reason. And so, again, I don't agree with sort of like the full argument that they're making, but they make a lot of true points, right? About how DEI is being embedded and it creates this ideology of oppressor versus oppressed, and it's not good in many ways. But also, he's a billionaire, right? He went to Exeter, and these hedge funds are the ones who are pushing, right? The finance capital loves DEI. They're ones who pushing the ESG
BlackRock is the one who's pushing, yeah. They're the
and
ones
so
incentivizing it. So they're talking it's insane to witness because especially the hypocrisy when they were talking all of this like horrible rhetoric that's been coming out of the schools about white people and white history and white culture, Anglo-Saxon culture, all of these things. They didn't have any issue with it.
Right, yeah, like ADL, I mean, like the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League,
Yeah.
they're another one, right? They've been pushing, like, this DEI stuff, like,
Mhm.
weaponizing the advertisers against people, and that whole interaction with Elon was so interesting because Elon's been fighting them and Media Matters and NewsGuard and all these people, and then they got him all caught up and he went on an apology tour to Israel, and then he came home and he was like, "F you guys, F the advertisers." It's
You
like a
know,
whole
that was
show.
crazy.
It
They
was
put
like
a dog tag on him.
that's what I'm saying. I think that must have been part of the deal. Part of the deal was like, "All right, you came here. We know what the real deal is. Like, okay, you can go on stage and like put on a show for the peons."
It's so scary. I know. And now there's like an Israeli company doing all the verification. X is like the occupied state of it's the
I saw
occupied
you
state right
tweet
now.
that earlier. I was gonna ask you what you meant by that. Is that what you're
Dude,
talking
the
about?
amount of agents that you run into on there, the Hasbara like agents, it's insane. Like the Israeli government is in X
Yo, all my
running.
paid advertisements, like between YouTube and X
No,
and
just the
just like
individual
around on the
people.
oh, there's that too, but I'm just saying like a lot like my YouTube ad space like is being taken up by like on October 7th, Israel was suffered an unprovoked attack. Da, da, da. Like I was like so I
It's
like all the
insane. It's
buttons, I like
heavy.
let it play out. I'm like, yes, spend your ad money on me. Um
It's heavy. It's heavy. It's like, what's going on? It's crazy. And you know the worst part about it too is that they're putting all of this on display and it's not going to make people cuz especially with the school thing, they want to get rid of all of the heads of the universities. And right now um I think it's like 6 out of the 9 of the schools are run by Jewish presidents, and they wanna and the 3 that they've sent to the Senate or sent to Congress to testify were the 3 that didn't have Jewish presidents. So it's like but then you wanna get upset when people mention, "Oh, there seems to be this sort of Jewish
Well, that's what I'm
supremacy
saying, right?
move."
There's a lot of divide and conquer going on. Look over here, but don't look over here. Let's talk about this thing, but not talk about it there. And I d- it just lots of inversion happening. And again, at some point it's hard to tell like what is like intentionally controlled and like what is just the nature of power at scale. Right? I
I
think
think
it's
it's
just
intentionally controlled.
yeah, but I
Why
also
wouldn't it
think
be?
it's just sort of like the nature of ideologues, right? Like, I
No, I
mean,
think if
like
people want to
I
have
think
Jews.
Netanyahu's a psychopath. You know what I
No, I'm
mean?
talking
Like,
about, like, for the schools, for example, like, the fact that they have all the schools run by Jewish heads, like, the presidents are all Jewish, and then they wanna replace them, like, they just got one of them, I forgot which one, I think it's UPenn, she resigned. They
no, I
replaced her,
understand. So are they going to
you know.
replace the other ones that are Jewish though, or like how does that play into it, or like,
No,
you
the
know what I
other
mean?
2, they wanna still get rid of them and replace I mean, they replaced one with a Jewish woman, so it's like but then
Okay,
you get
I
mad.
see.
You
Okay.
know? Then
Yeah,
they
yeah,
get
yeah.
mad that it's like, "Oh, why are you bringing this up that it happens to be that, Biden's cabinet 90% seem to be Jewish," and, like, so it's like it's a weird gaslighting place to be, and the Bill Ackman thing is just, like, shows you so much that they don't care about what's actually affecting people, like you said, the bureaucrats and the people in power don't care. They didn't care about DEI when it was hurting white people. I mean, I
Right. I
consider
mean,
most Jewish people white, but you know what I mean, like the whole
no, yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always said I'm like Caucasian
yeah, I
and
don't get that.
Jewish, you
I don't get
know?
that, but yeah,
Yeah,
seems
especially
pretty
because like Jewish people have all sorts of different ethnicities. Like it definitely like
yeah,
I've
like a
had that
Jewish German
conversation. It
person is
gets
white.
right. It definitely gets, interesting. Especially if we're talking going back 2000 years and if you were to do like everybody's bloodline back that long, like it's like 80
That's just
generations or something,
no.
and like everybody statistically speaking, like unless you're from like a very isolated bloodline, probably have somebody, it's just like the whole thing is definitely complicated. And like I said, some of it I think is just sort of the nature of um the way things go when you over put too much emphasis on identity. And then some
Yes,
of it I do
identity
think
politics.
is like people, powerful people trying to push for agendas, and then, powerful groups of reactionaries in response. I was talking with somebody on Twitter, and they said, fighting with Hegel is like fighting with a woman. Once you get it, it always ends up in bed, or you always end up in bed together, or something like that. Yeah.
Oh my
So, like,
God.
like fighting the Hegelian dialectic, it's like you can't help but to just like become part of the dialectic and start
Yeah.
participating in that just really poisonous interaction back and forth, the controlled opposition, right? And to be controlled opposition doesn't mean you literally have to be like a double agent knowing. It just means you're in a symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationship
Yeah.
with somebody else and you feel like you're
Yeah.
winning.
Like
But
the people
really,
who are reposting all that gay porn of the Senate, or gay corn, I would say, that is being part of the dialectic. You're like,
right.
you're amplifying, this is the image of America. How about let's not do that?
Exactly, exactly. So I guess this is a good time to switch over to the 2024 election. I think a lot of these things that we're talking about are certainly having a big impact on that 2024 conversation, whether it's the specific issue of Israel-Palestine and the realignment between the Republicans and the Democrats, and then again, this whole like dialectic, mutually beneficial relationship, in particular when it comes to Trump and the Democrats, because I don't know, every time it was like, look, they hate him, they hate Trump, they keep putting charges on him, they want to put him in jail, and I'm like, yeah, but every time they do that, he just goes up in the polls. Like they're not dumb. Like like
I know.
they love Trump. I think that it's a competition. I don't know. Let us know in the comments who loves Trump more, MAGA Republicans or blue no matter who Democrats. Like
I know. They couldn't be possibly working together. There's no way that's possible.
we got the Elder Olympics of 2024. Yes, I know. I can't even believe it. It's like it's like looking like a replay of 2020. I'm so sick of it.
Yeah,
Um
that's too bad.
but I don't know, I have an article here, I again, I don't want to play into the divide and conquer politics. Like I love Trump supporters. Don't get me wrong. Like me sitting, when I critique Trump, it's not because I'm like, oh, those Trump supporters, horrible people, far right, what extremists, whatever. No, like I love Trump supporters. I love you. I think you guys love America. I think you truly want what is best for this country. And, Trump offered an alternative, right? An alternative from the status quo. And so I get
Yeah.
it. But I also think that it's even if Trump does ultimately end up being the guy or whatever, we at least deserve to have a real conversation, right? And again, I don't want to like saying this might seem like I'm being like attacking you or whatever, but like I just feel like it feels like we're like whoring ourselves out a little bit. We're just like selling ourselves to, so quickly off to the lowest bidder. um like, no, let's ask some hard questions. Let's get some real options here. But anyways, I'm going on. What are your outlooks for 2024? What are you thinking? Big picture,
Um,
small picture?
I'm just more concerned about the state of humanity and whether or not people are tracking and sort of getting it, because no matter who they choose, the people are the ones who are going to set the expectations and, you know, set the goals for what they want to see in their country and try to push for that. And I just feel like right now people are so woke on both sides that they're not able to identify, okay, what do we need to do to solve these problems? They just want to play into their I'm better than you and you're bad for this reason, you know?
Right. And so when you
And
say woke, do you mean like identitarian, whether it's like
yeah,
your
identity
race?
politics. Yeah,
Okay.
identity politics and woke, I feel like, is when you are part of something where you advocate for things that are against your best interests. Like on both sides, advocating to send billions of dollars to foreign governments. That's to fight wars. That's against America's best interests. I'm sorry. Like there's plenty we can do with that money. So that's a
Right.
sense of woke if
Especially
they're doing it.
at this state in time. I'm like, I was like, why didn't we put Israel in Texas? That would have made sense. Because then they would have like a home, we would have border security. It would have like worked out
I
perfectly.
know.
I
We could
know
send
the
an
whole
aircraft
like
carrier.
homeland Jerusalem thing, a small little detail, but
Wouldn't it be nice to send an aircraft carrier to the Gulf and just like leave it there to protect our
like to
it's,
what's the river in between us? The Rio Grande.
yeah, they could send the aircraft carrier right up in there and just, stop them from passing over. So I don't know. It's crazy to think that this is where we are in a society where it's just like, and then the worst part, the best part that makes the right super, super woke is they're like, yeah, fund Israel. It's our greatest ally, da, da, da. And they're planning to send those people the ones that they can't exterminate, they're planning to send them to like Western countries like Belgium, planning to send them to America. That's like unofficial documentation. So it's like, we keep doing this over and over again. It's like you want
Right.
America to not be flooded with immigrants, but you have your greatest ally saying, "Hey, you need to take our leftovers."
Right. Well, that's something like we didn't talk about either. That's totally connected from before is we're doing all these interventionist wars, destabilizing the Middle East. And now the majority of um refugees do actually take refuge in the countries closest to where they live. I believe it's something like 10 or 15%
Yeah.
actually end up permanently dislocated in a place that's very far from their original country in the West. I think that's something that is really good for people to understand in terms of perspective. Sometimes I think there's this idea that all these refugees end up in the West, and actually it's a smaller percentage that end up in the West. But nonetheless, not small numbers, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Not small
tens of
numbers.
millions of refugees, hundreds of thousands and millions end up in the West, spread out in different countries, some taking in multiple percentage worth of their population. So I'm not trying to minimize the impact it has on our nations, but we need to talk about why it's happening. And we are, I, I mean, and again, there's other forces out there. I think that this is
Mhm.
another thing that I hear. They're like, "Oh, well, you just think that the world is such a nice place and America can just, you know, be an isolationist and China and Russia won't take things over." And I'm like, "No, that's not what I'm saying either." But
Again, the two extremes. It's either one or the
right,
other. Well, how about
right.
the third option?
Right. Well, so speaking of the third option, what does that mean then in terms of the 2024 elections for you? Like, what is the third
I
option?
I mean, with me, it's so difficult because you have somebody like Nikki Haley who like is such a war hawk. It's just so obvious. You have all of these people like just blatant hypocrites. It's just really, I don't
What
know,
about
it's just really
Vivek?
gross. Huh, Vivek? I mean, I don't think he's gonna get elected. Like, I just don't see that happening. And it's really unfortunate because they all are part of the establishment. And again, I'm just looking more at the people and where they are. And I just feel like the people are going to keep getting more of the same until the people figure it out, like
Right.
not to play into the game.
Right. No, and like I like Vivek because he says a lot of true things, right? Just like you said, shit that Nikki Haley's Dick Cheney and heels. And he was dropping some bombs, but certainly he does the theatrics. Like I think he was at Turning Point USA and he was like, F you.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it was about, but it seemed like a little like certainly planned and a little unnatural. And I get phony vibes from him. And like you said, he's definitely part of the establishment, just the way he's run his money and some
Mhm.
of the companies he started in terms of controlling data and health security and things like that.
Yeah.
But I guess like on the margin, when you have somebody who has a really big platform, who's out there and who does actually spread, I think, fundamental principle ideas of liberty, it's also like hard to be mad at that, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
I try to
No.
do when I go on a place like Fox News, right? Like, could I go on Fox
Mhm.
News and say something super crazy?
They
Yeah, like
called you a
I could.
Democrat. They
I
called you a
could.
Democrat.
I am a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat.
That's so funny. They're like, "You're gonna have this Democrat up here."
I'm a registered Democrat. I
The
am.
ultimate
And
insult
I mean,
on
I
Fox
guess, but
News.
also they like try to bring on people with different, political affiliations, right? So there was like 2 Democrats, an independent, 3 Republicans. Like, are we
Mhm.
representative of like, am I a super progressive Democrat? Like, no, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of Democrats, the quieter part of the party, that are like way more reasonable. And you know what? Like, people who work at Media Matters or any of these stations, news stations, or super ideologues, they're not out talking to the people. They're not door knocking. They're not working the polls for 8 hours on election day. And do you know who
No.
is? I am. And I hear from Democrats every single day how frustrated they are with the party. How many Democrats
Yeah.
are registered Democrat because, they live in a Democrat state, but a lot of times they vote Republican or for one of these other parties. So lots of things can be true.
I think it just goes down to the fact that each of those parties are coded differently for the different bias. And there's a book called Don't Think of a not Don't Think of an Elephant. It's like reframing. It's about reframing things. And in the book they talk about how the Democrats are coded for basically the mommy, the caring government, the loving government, and the Republicans are coded basically for the daddy, the hard authoritarian, the
Mm,
disciplinarian government. And
yeah.
so that's just all they appeal to, and that's all they're doing. They work in tandem together again. There needs to be a third option.
Yeah, and like you said, it's going to be incumbent upon the people, and I do think that's what I'm really trying to do here on the channel is, I participate in the political process now. I make on the margin decisions about, with things that I'll make decisions on the short term that may not, be exactly in line with my greater values because I'm doing the lesser of two evil game.
Yeah.
But my real emphasis and my real focus and where I have my optimism is more in the long-term game, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line. I think there's a lot of things happening now in terms of education and awareness, getting in
Mhm.
touch with the values of liberty, our constitution. People are, thinking about their relationship with God and organized religion and just like what all these things mean. We're also in the early stages still of the internet and of social media and this new way of communicating and new forms of money and globalization. Like, I just think like we're in a confusing time and it's hard to say where we're going to be in 5 years, let alone like 10 or 15 years. So that's sort of like what I think of when I think of the third option. And also really focusing locally and on like real relationships
Yeah,
in person.
that needs to happen. Hmm.
So we have right here, Trumbull School says the best option for third option, and this is like what I was
Yeah.
just saying, great minds think alike, starts with local politics. And Trumbull Schools is pretty close to me. We're both in Connecticut. Trumbull's just like 40 minutes, 50 minutes away from me. And so this is one of the differences I have with libertarians overall by them seeking big offices while ignoring the small ones. I actually do think that libertarians have won quite a bit, and I was listening to Dave Smith on the Reasons podcast, like The Reason has a new podcast out, and they were talking about
Okay.
like what does it mean to be libertarian, and I do believe near the end of the podcast he did say that the Mises takeover of the Libertarian Party, their strategy is to focus on these smaller elections and making some wins locally and building up that way. So
Yeah.
so if you're interested in that, I was actually thinking of going to the Libertarian Party convention. I mean, I'm not registered as a libertarian, I'm a Democrat, but my friend is like really big into Libertarian Party, and I think I can like go as her guest or something like that. So,
Oh, nice.
so that's in the spring in DC. But do you pay attention at all to local politics, or
Yeah,
like
I
what do
definitely
you?
do. California local politics are really big. I mean, it affects everything about us. I learned that the hard way during COVID. So, it's a big deal. And I think, like, yeah, paying attention to local politics is essential. There's no out. There's nothing you can do. The federal level, like, there's very little you're going to be able to do, you know, um, just with how much control they have over everything. So it's really up to us to, again, educate ourselves, look at locally, what can we do? How can we influence people in our sphere? How can we influence and mold our society? Because there's all sorts of options. There's constitutional counties
Mm.
that, sprung up during COVID because people are like, we have to get rid of all of this bureaucracy and go back to constitution. And people still have local power. It's just that we don't use it. We don't focus on it. We're too busy being distracted by, gay TikTok videos and Hunter Biden scandals.
Yeah, and guilty is charged, guilty is charged.
Yeah, we don't
But
fall for it.
yeah,
Mhm.
and but again, it's all about like how much emphasis and focus do you put on it. It's one thing to like be aware that it's happening, but it's like
Yeah.
so I really am trying to do the local stuff like you said. That's why I mean, I've been a Democrat for like some time now, but that's why I went unaffiliated and then I went back to Democrat because I was
Yeah.
like, how can I get involved in politics? And to me, it just seemed like the most viable path to like get involved and have the type of impact that I'm looking to have because the Republicans here just like have no power and like for example, like on my local um like version of the city council, it's called the Board of Representatives. We have 40 there's 40 reps, right? So there's 20 districts, two from each district, and four of them are
Mhm.
Republican and 26 of or yeah, and 36 of them are Democrats. So it's just
Oh,
like
wow.
you know what I mean? Like the power imbalance is so crazy, but also like if you look at the Democrats, like there's like such a wide variety of Democrats and like what they believe, and like there's like the establishment Democrats, but then there's like the more fiscally conservative Democrats, like like the way like how there used to be like liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats, like that's the way it really
Mhm.
is like in local politics. Um
Exactly.
so yeah, again, I that's where I think our energy is, and then it also just, like, feels good, like, it feels good to, like, be in a room with, like, real people, that live around the corner with you, and you have shared experiences
It
and, like,
does.
shared references beyond, like, some bland, TV show that airs on freaking Netflix, you know? Um
I know, it is nice to be in a real to be a part of a community, and that's what can solve so many of these issues if we just have community again, if we just have people, neighbors talking to neighbors, if we just had those basic things, because the downfall of society has come from people not being able to be with their kids and have dinner and have family and have friends and connections. Like, how many problems would be avoided if we could do that? And that's why during COVID it was so important to isolate people.
Right, right. Isolate them because it just totally just, like, throws your vibe off, man, when you,
Those
like,
are
don't have
vital. And it
human
makes you
connection.
susceptible. Yeah, it
Yeah, it
makes you
makes you
susceptible.
susceptible to all sorts of, like, influence and just, like, your
Mhm.
mental health, and that's what I really think the core of our mental health problem is just this lack of connection with our family and with our community,
Yeah.
and so then we get hooked on these drugs and we get, like, sad, or, before you get to the drugs, you just, like, get so sad and you don't know why, and you get down
You
on
get
yourself and this
radicalized
and that,
too. Mhm.
Um so, and that's again, certainly, I feel like, we're all susceptible, especially like when I get to scrolling on the phone, like I can just like, get addicted to the scroll, or like having like the YouTube playing while you're doing this and like that. And it's like sometimes you
Yeah,
just need silence. Um,
you do.
and you forget just the joy of playing a board game or playing chess. Like I don't let my son have a lot of screen time. So like I am sort of like forced sometimes, like in that sense, to be like, all right, we're gonna play a board game. We're gonna
Oh,
do this.
not the interaction one-on-one, no.
Yeah.
I know, it's
And,
so
like, my
true.
son will just be doing the wildest things, like, when I don't let him, like, play and he has to, like, entertain himself, like, just, like, the crazy with the action figures, or, whatever. I let him, like, listen to music, so just, like, jamming out, to his songs and stuff. It's like, that's being a parent is, like, so many struggles and this and that, but I feel like that was, like, definitely, like, the cheat code during COVID was, like, having a kid that could just pull you into their magical land. So,
Something real.
yeah, yeah, I highly recommend it, I highly recommend it. So, get to working on that. Tell your mans.
Yeah.
Um But what do you got looking out for the future? We're heading into 2024, so new year, new Layla. Like, what do you got
Yeah,
on
no,
the?
I'm rebranding. I'm trying to come up with, because I really wanna teach people how to think, how to exert their sphere of influence, how to communicate, how to solve problems, and how to make yourself not so susceptible to all this propaganda. Because you really have to, you know, think in a new way to break outside the box. You have to think like, so few people can think like a propagandist, think like somebody who makes propaganda. They don't think like that. They don't think, oh, why they think, why would someone do something like that? Why would they say that? Why would they lie about this? It's just, there's so much there that people can learn and grow from. So I'm just trying to rebrand and get that together, because I'm definitely not for turning Gaza into glass. So that sort of makes me anti-Christ, anti-conservative, which
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, I've kind of like not. I've never super been a fan, like, of the conservative label. I sort of felt like during the anti-mandate stuff and the anti-lockdown stuff, it did seem like everybody got thrown in with the conservative. Not only do I think
Yeah.
conservative is not a good brand for conservatives, like, I just don't think it really describes what they're talking about. Um, like, I think that they're trying to say that they want to be, like, pro-liberty, right? Like, I think they're trying to say, like, because, like, when I think of conservative, I think of, like, I guess a good example of this right now is, have you seen that calendar that came out featuring, like, Riley Gaines and,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
um, the redheaded libertarian? I'm gonna pull it up
Yeah.
actually real quick. And so
Thirst trapping. Yeah, I know. It's so funny.
no, but what I'm saying, so but it's like it's not conservative. You know what I mean? Like, she's on the front cover of this thing. Like, here, I have it right here.
Yeah, it's not conservative at all.
Okay, so it's not conservative, right? And, like, personally, I'm like, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it makes me kind of uncomfortable because I mean, I go to the beach, like, I wear a bathing suit, I see girls in their bathing suit. But I guess it's like, we know that she's posing for dudes, like, this and that. I personally wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah, I don't
It's
know
n
what they're
it's
doing.
not conservative,
No, it's
but I'm for freedom. I'm pro freedom. And if she wants to go on the front of a magazine and people wanna buy it, knock
yeah.
yourself out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like, so,
don't their brand is
that's
all over the place.
it's the
Basically what they're
that's
saying, they
they're not
want sex.
conservative.
No, they're not conservative.
Do you
They
think that
are
do you think she
authoritarian.
wants sex?
I mean, that's to sell hot sexiness, but it's not conservatism. There's conservatives, there's people who actually want authoritarianism, there's people who want a theocracy, there's real conservatives. But the majority of people were going toward the Republican side. I mean, in California, there was no, like, it was obvious. Like, the Democrats were so gung ho with lockdowns, that's where you went.
Right,
And I
right.
still believe in a lot of those principles because the Democrats, especially in a super hyper progressive place like this, they don't care about anything. They want to destroy the Constitution, they want to get rid of it all.
Power,
So
power,
it's sort of,
power.
yeah, it's sort of like you have to stick with your principles and you have to identify, okay, where do I sit with these issues and who is going to align with me? And if Republicans want to just be hypocrites and be conservative influencers who back funding wars just in a different location, then okay, I guess I'm not really down with that. So it's pretty simple.
Alright, well, I look forward to the rebranding. I definitely feel like
Oh,
I'm on that same wave with you, trying to
yeah,
just, make more like, do less issue-based content and more
yeah,
principle and fundamentals based content so people can take the
definitely.
lessons and look at any issue and be like, okay, this is how I think about this issue. This is how I can be critical and thoughtful about this issue. Because it does
Mhm.
feel like you just like get caught up in the cycle of just like reacting to this, reacting to that. And it's like, am I
Yeah,
actually making a
yeah,
difference or am I just like click hunting?
yeah,
But
it's
at the same
gross.
time, it's like you gotta click hunt or you not gonna, break through. So I guess, like, I'll finish off on this note by saying,
Mhm.
like, have you ever read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky?
Yeah, I have. Mhm.
So it's like, I know a lot he gets a bad rap because, like, again, it's like, it's not about the action, it's about the reaction, it's not about the thing, it's about revolution, right? But I do feel like I can relate to some of those things to the extent it's right, like, the ends have to justify the means. And he
Mhm.
really goes like he really thinks a lot about what does the ends justify the means mean? Is there a consistent principle based formula you can apply to know when that ends justify the means? And his conclusion is basically no. Right? It's like so varied from situation to situation. It just has to be right, the right person meeting the moment. Um, and so yeah, I think that that's the line that we really have to to constantly be walking, right? In order not to become crazy woke progressive or crazy, neocon on the right version of wokeness. It's like we constantly have to be asking ourselves, like, what ends justify the means? What is our overall mission and goal here? And,
Yeah.
who does, who's the real who's the real enemy that we're against? Like, what's the biggest issue that we're actually against? Like you said, there's a lot of little small distracting issues, like, oh, they're changing all the different flags of the symbols. And then there's like the real issues that we need to sort through. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you coming here and helping me sort through some of these things and notice these trends. And, as
No, this
always,
is fun as always. We are
yeah,
on the same wavelength. We're both just so fed up. We gotta
no,
break through.
that's what I was gonna say. It was really interesting though when the Israel-Palestine thing happened, and to see who sort of, what I would say, considered stayed the same, depending on your
Mhm.
perspective, and who like flipped over to like, being like pro-war and stuff.
Yeah.
And like with it's like, without consulting, it seems like kind of like the core group of people who I like really connected with, both in person and then like people online like you, who I've like consistently just continued to have conversations with, like, without dropping the beat, like we all kind of like got it. And so I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to sharing that knowledge, seeing your rebrand, seeing what you do. Everybody out there, make sure that you follow Layla. I have her stuff linked in the description down below. Of course, make sure you're following me.
Mhm.
And we do this every day over on the gram and on X and all that good stuff. So appreciate everybody checking in, and
Yes,
we'll
it's awesome.
yeah, we'll catch you next time.
All
Peace
right.
out.
See you again. Bye.
All right. Remember, think free, live free, give all the glory to God.